On a quiet moon in the Cyrex system, a young alien girl asked her mother a question before bed. Is it true that if you feel too much, the red woman comes? The mother didn't answer right away. She only reached out, turned off the lights, and whispered, "Sleep. Don't dream too loud." Because across the stars, her name still echoed Lira Thane, the girl who turned sorrow into power. The human who didn't kill the galaxy. She made it feel again. Core story. Years passed after the fall of Zareth Prime, the Vexery. Homeworld never recovered. Not because its cities were destroyed, but because its soul was changed. Its people had tasted emotions again. And once you feel, you can unfeel. Some chose exile. Others went mad. A few stayed silent, still whispering her name in the dark. And Lira. She was gone. The last recording of her came from a red chorus satellite, 27 light-years from Earth. It showed her aboard a small shuttle, flying into deep space alone. She didn't say where she was going. She only smiled at the camera, eyes glowing, soft red. And she said one line, "The galaxy's awake now. I've more to do." Then she vanished. No one ever found her again, but her legacy, it never left. On Earth, a great monument stands where the first Vexery ship once fell. It shows Lira with arms outstretched, surrounded by waves of light. Tears run from her eyes, real tears made of pure emotion-infused energy that never stop. Flowing, children gather there to touch the light, elders sit and remember. And sometimes, the wind carries her voice. The red chorus didn't fade. They became something more, not an army, not a cult, a culture. They taught schools in the emotional arts called resonance academies, where humans learned how to master grief, joy, rage, love, and hope as directed forces. Doctors healed the sick with pulses of compassion. Architects shaped buildings using focused awe. Defenders patrolled with shields made of shared pain and courage. Emotion became Earth's signature weapon and its greatest language. And what of the galaxy? Some races watched with awe, others with fear. A few tried to replicate the resonance techniques. None succeeded, because only humans carried the full weight of emotion, chaotic, beautiful, terrible emotion wired into their DNA. One Talrune priest said, "They weep when they lose. They rage when they love. They are the only ones who feel in all directions at once." Now, when humans arrive on a planet, people whisper. They're descendants of her. They carry echoes of Earth's pain. They know how to turn memories into storms. And deep down, every species remembers. Zareth Prime, the sky cracking. The screams that weren't from pain, but from realization. One Vexery survivor, now a refugee poet, once wrote, "She did not speak like a conqueror. She sang like a widow, and we could not breathe." Among humans, a simple phrase became common. Feel it like Lira. It means don't hold back. It means let your emotions be power. It means you are human and that is enough. But not all stories are clean, some say. Lira became something more than human, that in deep space, she encountered an ancient force, older than galaxies, a being that feeds on feeling, or that she tamed it with a single tear. Others believe she became a resonance ghost, living in the emotional field itself, appearing only when the galaxy needs her most, and a few whisper that she walks among the stars still, hiding in plain sight, wearing a smile and a memory only she understands. On one far-off colony, a ship came crashing down. No one survived, but when rescue teams arrived, they found a symbol burned into the blackened hull, with a single red circle, the mark of the red chorus, and a message scrawled beneath in human script. We are still here, on Earth. Children still visit. The weeping statue, some place flowers, some sit in silence. But one boy, older than 10, placed his hand on the glowing stone and said, "Thank you for making us remember." Statue shimmered, and for 1 second, everyone nearby heard a soft hum, her lullaby. Lira Thane was never a god, never a soldier. Never a queen. She was simply human. But in being human fully, with all the pain and love and fury that came with it, she changed the galaxy forever. End of series, she was an emotional human. Now she's the reason. Aliens fear Earth's sci-fi defenders, HFY. High above the marble halls of the Vexery capital, nobles dined beneath silver trees. The wind was soft. The sky glowed a peaceful violet. One noble laughed, swirling a crystal glass in his hand. This emotional plague of Earth is just a trick. Nothing can touch us here. Another smirked. Let them cry in their ruins. We are above such weakness. They did not see the shimmer in the clouds. They did not hear the hum building in the upper sky. But soon they would. The air cracked like shattered glass. The clouds peeled open like bleeding paper. And from above, red streaks began falling bright. Pulsing light descending like a storm made of grief. Someone screamed. One noble fell to his knees, whispering a name he hadn't spoken in centuries, because she had arrived. Lira Thane. And with her came the red chorus, core story, the Vexery homeworlds. Verith. Prime was a fortress planet. No enemy had ever touched its surface. Its orbital shields were the strongest in the galaxy. Its defense grid could melt fleets before they reached the clouds, but none of that mattered. Now, because Lira didn't come with ships, bombs. She came with emotion. An emotion passed through any shield from orbit. 3 red chorus carriers hovered in complete silence. No weapons, no engines fired, just open channels, pulsing with emotional resonance frequencies. Inside the command vessel, Lira stood, with her hands behind her back, staring at a hologram of the planet around her. The top 100 chorus members meditated in perfect unison, each one focused on a single memory. A lost child, a murdered family, a first kiss that never happened, a friend they never got to save. The air inside the ship pulsed with invisible energy. The pulse grew, and then Lira spoke one word. Release. Below Anzarth Prime. The effect was instant. The capital city's main tower cracked from top to bottom. Vexery elites screamed in confusion as their neural implants overloaded. Some dropped where they stood, clutching their heads. Others tore at their robes, eyes wide, seeing visions of old regrets and long-buried pain. The emotional pulse spread. Faster than light, it wasn't just sound. It wasn't just vibration. It was memory itself, turned into raw psychic force. For a species that had surgically removed emotion, it was poison in the palace war chamber. Admiral Valtorin fell to the ground. He saw himself as a child again, crying after his sister's death, a memory he didn't know still existed, but Lira had found it. She had unlocked it. All across the planet, the same thing happened. Vexery warriors froze mid-stride. Drones stopped flying. Artificial minds shorted out, screaming ancient lullabies they'd never learned. Hospitals overflowed with citizens having full-bodied tremors. Some wept, laughed uncontrollably. Some stared into nothing, whispering apologies. Lira descended in silence. Her boots touched the surface of Zareth. Prime for the first time. The ground itself seemed to tremble. Talia walked beside her. Do we hold back? She asked. Lira looked across the broken city skyline. No, she said. We show them everything. The red chorus spread through the capital in squads. Where they walked, walls peeled, machines folded inward, and minds collapsed under the weight of feeling. One squad marched through a data center. The servers burst into flame, able to process the emotional data being broadcast by a team of 3 humans, simply remembering their children. Another squad approached a weapons vault. The vault opened on its own. The system AI inside said, in a broken voice, I miss my maker. Then it shut itself down forever. By dusk, the skies above Zareth Prime had turned red. Not from fire, from resonance. From grief turned into storm clouds. From love turned into glowing wind. from sorrow turned into a force that reshaped the very air. The nobles who once laughed now hid in caves, sobbing like infants. Their minds had no armor for this kind of war. On the top floor of the shattered high spire, Lira stood before the Council of Silence, the last 6 rulers of the Vexery. They stared at her, eyes wide. One whispered, "Why do you do this?" She didn't raise her voice. "You erased emotion from your kind," she said, "and then you came to Earth, where emotion is our heartbeat." She stepped forward. "You called us weak because we cried, because we mourned, because we loved." She placed her hand on the floor. The entire tower shuddered. "And now you know what those feelings really are?" One of the council members fell to their knees. "I see." "My father," they whispered. "He tried to hold me. I pushed him away." Lyra's eyes shimmered red. "You should have listened." Later, she stood at the edge of the palace roof. Below her, the capital lay quiet. No more screams. No more engines. Only soft music played a song from Earth's final days. Lira looked at the stars. Talia stood beside her. "Is it over?" she asked. Lira closed her eyes. "No," she said. "This was just the last one who mocked us." She turned to face the stars. "There are others, watching, waiting, judging us." She opened her hand, and a pulse of warmth spread outward. "Now they'll see who we've become." In the dark corners of the galaxy, alien races watched the red sky above Zareth Prime, and for the first time in centuries, they felt fear, not of death, not of war, but of something much harder to survive, feeling everything. Admiral Veltorin jolted awake, gasping. The room was quiet. The lights were soft blue. It's hard if you could call the cold organ inside his chest. A heart thudded against the edge of panic. He wiped his brow. The dream had come again. Lira, standing, still, saying nothing, her face streaked with tears, her red eyes glowing, and behind her the corpses of his soldiers curled up like children, whispering nonsense, begging for forgiveness, or simply gone. He sat up in bed, clutching the side of his head. It wasn't just a dream, it was a warning. Veltorin touched a nearby panel. "Command." His voice cracked. A screen blinked to life. "Emergency reinforcements," he said. "Triple coverage. She's coming. I want the fleet moved now." The commander on the screen paused, then said only 2 words. "Fear protocols." Veltorin's jaw tightened. Yes. Core story across the stars. The mighty Vexery Empire was trembling, not from plasma strikes, not from Earth's old war fleets, but from feelings, from emotion, from the unstoppable spread of resonance energy that had turned ordinary humans into walking storms of pain, rage, and sorrow. At the center of this growing terror stood Lira Thane. She had no crown, no army of machines, no throne, but she had grief so deep it cracked walls. She had love strong enough to reboot alien systems. She had rage sharp enough to tear into the minds of the Vexery's best warriors. They had no defense, so they created the fear protocols. The fear protocols were simple. If Lira Thane is confirmed on planet, retreat. Do not make visual contact. Do not scan her mind. Do not speak her name aloud within fleet systems. If you feel anything terminate your mission, the protocols were installed in every Vexery ship, outpost, and command center. But it wasn't enough, because fear had already taken root. Vexery soldiers began reporting strange symptoms, headaches, without cause, visions of people they had forgotten, hearing music when no sound existed, dreaming for the first time in generations. Some begged to be removed from duty. Others simply disappeared. A few took their own lives, whispering her name. Lira, Lira, Lira. The great Vexery fleets that once ruled 10 star systems were now filled with silence and doubt. One officer said, "We removed emotion from our species, but she put it back in like a virus." In secret meetings, the Vexery High Command debated. Some wanted to destroy Earth entirely. Others argued Earth was already spreading faster than light. Lira is not just a human, said one elder commander. She is a frequency, a signal made of memory and sorrow. She could infect an entire planet with one breath. Then came the proof. At Outpost 36R, a ship's AI self-destructed without command. The last log said, "I dreamed of laughter. It was not built for that." The Vexery knew now. Even their machines were breaking. The galaxy watched in silence. Other alien species, once afraid of Earth, began to whisper about the girl with red eyes. The Jandari, a race of logic-driven engineers, sent drones to observe her movements. The Talrune, emotion-feeding life forms, grew curious and stayed near Earth. Even the long-absent Mir Collective asked one question through subspace: is she savior or God? Back on Earth, Lira stood in a quiet field. Flowers grew from the cracked soil, first signs of life in years. Children played nearby, unaware that their very emotions were now Earth's greatest defense. Talia approached from behind. "We intercepted another Vexery transmission. They've created something called the fear protocols." Lyra's expression didn't change. "They already had fear," she said softly. "Now they just gave it a name." That evening, a red chorus. Strike team returned from a mission. Their leader, once a teacher from Tokyo, held an alien officer in his arms. The officer was crying, begging, whispering Lyra's name again and again like a lost prayer. When Lira stepped forward, "Do you feel?" he asked. "Why does it hurt us?" She kneeled beside him. "Because feeling is being alive," she said. "And you've forgotten how to live." He sobbed harder. And then softly, quietly, he died. Not from pain, but from remembering. Elsewhere, Admiral Veltorin watched another feed go dark. His hands trembled. He turned to his advisors. "We must create a shield," he barked. "Something to block her resonance. Frequency wall." But none of the scientists answered. They were all crying, softly. Some, for the first time in their lives, Veltorin backed away. "No," he whispered, "not you two." At the edge of the Vexery border, Earth launched its first non-military fleet. Only 3 ships, piloted by unarmed Red Chorus members. Each ship played a different song on an endless loop. One, a lullaby. One, a recording of laughter. One, a quiet voice whispering, "I forgive you." The Vexery ships meant to intercept them turned away, every one of them. They didn't even try to fight. Lira stood on Earth's highest peak, wind in her hair, eyes glowing red like sunset. She looked up at the stars. "They thought we were weak," she said, "because we cried, because we mourned, because we felt." She smiled, but now the galaxy cries with us. The desert wind blew softly across the silent outpost. 12 humans walked side by side through the cracked red dust. No armor, no weapons, just plain clothes and calm eyes. Some wore medical coats. Others looked like construction workers or farmers. One young woman held a small picture of her sister in her hand. High above them, a Vexery guard spotted movement. He zoomed in with his scope and laughed. "They send us civilians." His voice echoed through the alien comms. "This is a mercy killing." But one by one, the alien soldiers watching them began to stop laughing. Then they began to choke. Then they screamed. The humans had not fired a shot, but they had already won core story, back on Earth. In the underground bunker, Lira Thane watched the footage from a satellite drone. Her red glowing eyes scanned the outpost as the last Vexery collapsed. Twitching, she turned to her second-in-command, Talia, and nodded. "That's the first strike." Talia smiled, her fingers still trembling. They never even saw it coming. The 12 who had attacked were part of Lyra's new force, the Red Chorus. Not soldiers, but feelers, humans. Trained to weaponize emotion, their motto was simple: we bleed, they break. Each had learned to focus a specific feeling into pure emotional resonance, rage, sorrow, guilt, hope, even shame. Each feeling had a different effect on Vexery minds. Rage created confusion. Grief triggered neural collapse. Guilt caused hallucinations. Love, true, deep love, disrupted their ship systems entirely. The Vexery Empire once proud and untouchable, now had no defense, because they couldn't understand what was attacking them. They had removed emotion from their species centuries ago. Now, that absence was their greatest weakness. Lira stood before the growing red chorus, nearly 200 humans. Trained in resonance, every one of them had survived something brutal: loss, war, captivity. But now they turned their pain outward. "We do not fight with weapons," Lira told them. "We fight with memory." Across the stars, the Vexery outposts began to fall one by one. No gunfire, no ships, just silence followed by terror. Each time a team from the Red Chorus arrived, it began the same way: calm, quiet, 12 or fewer humans, walking in with hands at their sides. Sometimes they smiled, sometimes they cried, sometimes they just stood there and said nothing. And always the aliens screamed. Vexery scientists couldn't explain it. Their scanners saw no energy blasts, no waves, no psychic signatures. But the moment these humans entered their bases, trained soldiers lost control. Officers forgot their own names. Commanders tore out their own implants. Entire ships refused to launch ship mines, infected by feelings they had no language for. The Vexery Empire began to panic. One alien general's Akral, head of planetary defense, watched a captured broadcast. It showed a middle-aged nurse from Earth stepping forward in a burned-out hallway. She held a single object in her hand, a pair of children's shoes, as she remembered her family, her husband, her daughter. 6 elite Vexery dropped to the floor before she even opened her mouth. They bled from the eyes. One whispered, "The Red Chorus is coming." Zakral turned off the screen. "This is not warfare," he said. "It's a disease." Back on Earth, in the Red Chorus training cavern, Lira moved through rows of recruits. Each was meditating, eyes closed, faces calm. Above them, a glowing crystal pulsed an amplifier they had pulled from a downed alien ship. Now it helped spread emotional resonance further, like a signal tower made of grief. Talia approached.
"Talia,
"We've had contact from Mars, eh?" "Colony survived." Lira nodded. "Let's send a team. Quietly, let them feel what we've built in the Vexery fleet," Talia asked. Lira turned to a glowing map. A swarm of alien ships was gathering in orbit around a key star system, building up for what looked like a retaliation wave. "They're preparing to strike hard," Talia said. Lira's voice was calm. "Then we'll strike first." That night, Lira gathered the original 12, the ones who had taken the first outpost. Each of them had a symbol burned onto their wrist, a red circle, the mark of the chorus. She pointed at a star on the map. "Outpost 92K, a forward base known for developing anti-human weapons. They laughed at us once," she said. "Now we teach them why humans cry." The team nodded. Not one carried a gun. Not one wore armor. They only carried memory and fire in their hearts. At dawn, the shuttle launched. As it drifted toward 92K, the team sat in silence. One woman hummed an old lullaby. A man stared at a photograph of his wife. Another clutched a scrap of cloth that once belonged to his son. Lira stood at the front, eyes closed, feeling their emotions swirl and grow stronger. Together, they weren't just fighters, they were a storm. The Vexery base spotted the shuttle as it approached. "Unarmed vessel," said one technician. "Board and interrogate," replied the commander. "Broadcasted across the fleet. Show them what happens to Earth's last breath." The hangar doors opened. The humans stepped out. One held a teddy bear. Another had flowers pressed in a clear bag. The Vexery guards laughed again, until the air changed, until the humming began, until the temperature dropped. Even though the heaters were at max, then one alien clutched his head. Then another screamed. Then all of them fell. The Red Chorus walked deeper into the base. Doors opened by themselves, ship, systems reacting to their presence. Lights flickered, in rhythm with their heartbeats, and far away, in the central Vexery network, an AI sent a message to all branches: Do not engage humans directly. Avoid eye contact. Avoid memory triggers. Evacuate if exposed to singing or emotional projection. But the message came too late. By then, a dozen bases had fallen, and still the humans came. Not as conquerors, but as the result of a mistake. The Vexery had made long ago. They tried to erase emotion. Now, emotion was erasing them. Back on Earth, Lira stood once more at the cliff of graves. The names were still there, the silence still thick. But now, her people had hope. A power no empire could copy or control. Lira whispered, "We feel. Therefore, we survive." And as she turned to lead the next wave of chorus into the stars, she knew this was only the beginning. Earth was Ashdod. Dead cities stretched across broken lands. Skies were thick with black clouds. Oceans glowed with strange alien chemicals. The air buzzed with the silence of a world that once held 8 billion souls, and on a lonely cliff, Lira Thane stood still. Her black boots were covered in dust. Her breathing was quiet. Her eyes glowed with a soft red shimmer.
Not from rage,
but from remembrance. She looked down at the field below, a graveyard, 8 billion names carved into black stone, and behind her, in the shadows of cracked rock and burnt trees, a group of survivors waited. They whispered her name like it was a ghost story. Was she real? Was she a weapon? Was she the reason the Vexery had pulled back from Earth's surface? No one knew, but today she would give them an answer. She turned to face them and said one word: follow. The core story. The survivors were ragged, starving, broken in body and mind. They had lived underground for months, hiding in old shelters. Many didn't even know if Earth was still fighting or if they were the last. Their leader, an old soldier named Colonel Hask, squinted at Lira. "You're just a girl," he said. "You're not the one they talk about. That one makes ships fall from orbit." Lira didn't argue. She walked forward and placed her hand on a nearby metal wall. She thought of her father, his smile the night before New Geneva fell. Her hand glowed, the entire wall bent outward like soft clay. She stepped back. No tools. No force, just feeling. Colonel Hask blinked. ... "What are you?" she answered. "I'm what they turned me into. But I'm still human, and so are you. That's why I'm here." Deep inside the bunker, Lira stood before nearly 100. Survivors, farmers, mechanics, medics, children, none were soldiers. But she didn't need soldiers. She needed humans, who still felt something. She stood at the center of the room and said, "The Vexery think we're broken, that we're finished. But they made a mistake. They thought our emotions were a weakness. They didn't realize it's our most powerful weapon." She raised her hand, her voice lowered. "When I cry, they bleed." At first, the survivors didn't believe, until one boy about 14 asked, "Can we do it too?" Lira knelt in front of him. "Do you remember your home?" she asked. He nodded. "The city before it burned." "Do you remember how it felt when it fell?" He swallowed hard. His eyes welled with tears. The lights above flickered. The wall behind them cracked softly. Everyone in the room gasped. Lira smiled gently. "You're already stronger than you know." The training began that night. She called it emotional resonance. She explained how human feelings weren't just chemical. They were energy. Energy that the Vexery couldn't process. Feelings disrupted their systems, shattered their tech, scrambled their minds. She taught them how to hold emotion without breaking. She taught them how to focus it, turn sorrow into directed pulses, turn rage into kinetic force, turn love into a healing field. Rage made people stronger. Grief bent reality. Love stitched broken cells. Not everyone succeeded at first. Some broke down in tears, some fainted, but Lira stood with them, day and night, guiding them. She wasn't a general. She was something deeper, a mirror, showing them who they could become. One morning, during a lesson, a tremor shook the bunker. A scout rushed in. Vexery patrol 3 ships, landing nearby. Ask reached for the last old plasma rifle they had. "Yes, we don't have the numbers. Lira stepped forward. "We don't need numbers," she said. "We have grief." She led a team of 7 volunteers. One was the young boy, the other a quiet woman named Talia, who had lost her entire family in the first strike. They stood at the edge of the landing site, hidden behind jagged stone. 3 sleek black Vexery ships touched down. 9 tall aliens marched out, scanning the area with energy rifles. Lira nodded once. Talia stepped out first. She didn't carry a weapon. She just walked into the open and closed her eyes. She thought of her daughter, her laughter, her smell. The last time she held her hand, a pulse rippled through the air, soft and sharp at the same time, too. Vexery dropped instantly. Their suits sparked. They began twitching. The others aimed their weapons. The boy stepped forward. He remembered his school, his friends, the way it all disappeared in one fireball. His scream wasn't loud, but the air cracked with it. Another 2 aliens collapsed. Then Lira walked forward, calm, focused. She remembered everything. The day Earth burned, the night she was taken, the silence of deep space. She held it all and then released it. The last Vexery fell to their knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Then silence. The humans returned to the bunker victorious. No one asked questions. Anymore, no one doubted. They began calling her the emissary. Not a soldier, not a savior, but a messenger of what Earth had become. Pain, shaped into purpose. Within days, more survivors arrived. The signal had gone out. Lira's emotional field, amplified by human minds around her, acted like a beacon. Humans from across the ruined zones began to return. Many had been hiding, scattered, lost. Now, they followed the one girl who turned tears into strength. She built schools in the underground. Caverns, not for weapons, for emotion, for discipline. Focus. Connection. She made people feel again, and every feeling made them stronger. One night, Colonel Hask stood beside her at the grave cliff. "You're building an army," he said. Lira shook her head. "No, I'm building humans." He looked at her. "You're not the same girl who came back to Earth, are you?" She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "No, but I remember her. She still remembers everyone we lost." She looked up. "At the stars, they made me feel everything. I'll teach the galaxy to do the same." In orbit, hidden in the cold shadows of the moon, a Vexery command ship watched the surface. The alien officer stared at the rising resonance readings. "Coming from Earth, sir? She's teaching them. She's spreading it." Another officer asked, "Should we intervene?" The commander shook his head. His eyes were wide. "No, we don't go near her. Not anymore." He whispered something in their native tongue. "Emotion is infection. Earth is becoming a plague." The lights flickered. Sirens howled through the metal halls of the Vexery science vessel. Security doors slammed shut. Red strobes flashed across the walls like angry eyes. And through the chaos, she walked Lira Thane, barefoot, calm, silent, around. Her alien bodies lay twisted on the floor, some shaking, others still. Their black eyes were wide, full of something no Vexery had felt in generations. Terror, as she moved forward. She hummed softly. A lullaby old. Earth-born. It was the song her mother used to sing on stormy nights. "Sleep, my star, the dark can't find you." Now the dark could hear her, and it feared her. Core story, it had begun just 14 minutes earlier. Lira stood in the main lab, her wrists no longer bound, her heart beating steady. A team of 6 guards waited outside the chamber. Behind her, a dozen. Humans sat in small glass cells, prisoners, like she had been. Most were too weak to speak. Some didn't even look up. But Lira saw them. She remembered what it was like to be alone, afraid, forgotten. Not anymore. Nevek, the young alien who had helped her escape once before, stood beside her. He trembled. "They will come now," he said quietly. "Too many to stop." Lira looked down the long hallway ahead. Lights flickered. Energy surged. "Not too many," she whispered. "Just enough." She closed her eyes. Inside her mind, she opened the door to her memories. She saw her little brother's smile, her father's final words, her mother's hand reaching out as fire fell from the sky. And then, silence. And that silence hurt. It stabbed like knives in her chest. But she didn't push it away. She held it close, let it build. Grief swelled in her chest like a storm. And when it grew too large to hold, she let it go. The wave of sorrow moved outward like a silent explosion, invisible to the eye. A heavy dash crushing. In the hallway outside, the guards screamed. Their weapons fell to the ground. Their bodies locked in place. One clawed at his own head. Muttering in a broken voice, another collapsed. Twitching as if stuck in a nightmare, Lira stepped over them as she walked. Humming her lullaby again, a Vexery commander in the control room watched the scene with horror. "What is this?" he demanded. His officers stared at the screens in silence. One whispered, "She is singing." The commander slammed a hand on the table. "Deploy the suppression unit." But it was too late. The suppression Team 12, trained enforcers, entered the corridor in full battle armor by the time they reached her. All 12 dropped to their knees within seconds. One wept. Another curled into a ball and begged for his mother, a mother he hadn't seen in over 200 years. The ship's artificial intelligence reported a full system disturbance. Emotional frequencies were flooding the central core. Entire decks began shutting down, unable to process the noise. Not noise from machines, noise from her feelings. Lira reached the holding cells. The other humans stared at her in shock. She looked stronger, not older. Brighter, almost glowing with emotion. "I'm here to get you out," she said. None of them moved. One woman stepped forward. "Who are you?" Lira looked at her through tear-streaked eyes. "I'm like you, but they made me something more." She walked to the control panel and touched it. With a burst of grief focused, direct, the panel shattered. The cells opened, the captives stumbled out. Some cried, some collapsed to their knees. All of them looked at Lira the same way, like she was no longer one of them. Navek stood at the edge of the hallway. His face was pale, his hand shaking. He looked at Lira. "You are not human anymore." She turned to him. "No," she said. "I'm something they created, but I still feel, and I remember what they did to us." She walked past him, leading the freed captives toward the hangar bay. "They made me feel everything," she said. "Now it's their turn." The group moved quietly through the wrecked ship. No one stood in their way. The few Vexery who remained conscious hid in the shadows. Shaking, some whispered strange words under their breath. Others called her the Echo. Others called her the Red Voice. All knew what she truly was now, emotion given form. At the shuttle bay, Navek activated the escape ship's controls. Lira helped the survivors on board. Guiding each one carefully, she was gentle with them, different. From how she had been in the lab, she hadn't lost her humanity. She had harnessed it as the last human climbed aboard. The ship shuddered. Vexery reinforcements had arrived, 2 larger cruisers locking onto the hangar from orbit. Navek paled. "We won't make it." Lira turned to face the hangar doors. She walked to the center. She closed her eyes and she remembered all of it. Not just pain now, but joy too. Every moment she had ever laughed, every song she had ever danced to, every warm meal, every starry night she let it rise. Love, the strongest emotion of all. From her body, pulse of golden light, exploded silent and pure. The entire hangar burst into color. The 2 approaching ships lost control, crashing into each other before they could fire. In the control room, Vexery technicians wept openly. One dropped to his knees and whispered, "What is this?" The commander stared in awe. "It's duty." Inside the shuttle, Navek looked at Lira with wide eyes. "You didn't destroy them." She nodded. "I let them feel something they tried to erase." As the shuttle launched into space, Lira sat beside a young boy who had been taken from Earth years ago. He looked up at her. "Are you a superhero?" Lira smiled softly. "No," she said. "I'm just someone who didn't stop feeling." Far behind them, the ship burned, not from fire, from memory, from sorrow, from everything the Vexery had buried for centuries. And now it had returned, not as warships, not as weapons, but as a single human girl, walking through their empire with nothing but her heart. Lira stood in the center of the cold alien room, her hands bound behind her back. Her cheeks were wet with tears. She didn't try to hide. They dripped onto the metal floor, each one a silent memory of the world she had lost, to Vexari. Watched from behind a glowing console, one of them, tall and gray-skinned, approached her with long, slow steps. His black eyes stared at her like she was an insect under a microscope. "You cry again?" he hissed, in perfect, lifeless English. "Why?" Lira didn't answer. The alien's face twisted with disgust. "Emotion. Useless. Weak. Dangerous only to yourself." Then, without warning, the Vexery slapped her hard across the face. The crack echoed in the chamber. But the moment his hand touched her, changed. The alien officer froze. His black eyes widened. Then his body shook, twitching, convulsing. He fell to the floor with a terrible sound, his limbs jerking like broken machinery. Smoke rose from his temples. His mouth opened, but no words. Came only a thin scream, raw and high. Like static through a dying radio, Lira backed away, staring in shock. She hadn't done anything, or had she? The second Vexery ran forward and scanned his partner. Neural cascade collapse, catastrophic overload. He looked at Lira with something no Vexery had ever shown before. Fear, core story. Lira sat in a different room now. Still cold. Still. Gray. But this one had no restraints. No bright lights. Only a quiet hum in a single chair. Across from her sat a Vexery scientist, Zelnari, the same one who had overseen her capture. It's the one who had watched her scream in the lab. He tapped. A screen but didn't speak. Then finally he said, "What are you?" Lira looked at him, still unsure of what she'd done. "I'm human." "No," Zelnari said flatly. "You are dangerous. When he struck you, your brain released an energy wave, not electrical. Not psychic. Something new." She said nothing. "You're a transmitter," he continued. "Your emotion is a weapon." Lira blinked. "You mean?" "He died because I felt something. He died because your sorrow touched him. Vexery minds are not built for chaos. Emotion to us is like poison," you cried. He broke. She stared down at her hands. They didn't look different. They didn't feel different. But something inside her was changing. Over the next few days, they ran more tests, but not like before. There were no screams or pain now. It's just observation. Zelnari stood behind thick energy walls. Drones floated around her, measuring every pulse in her brain. They showed her a recording of Earth's last broadcast, a mother holding her daughter in the ruins of a burning city. Lira cried again. 3 drones dropped from the air. Their systems fried instantly. Next, they played a video of her father's final voice message. Her chest tightened. She whispered, "I love you." The wall behind her cracked down the center. Exi Elnari's voice came through a speaker. "Feelings carry force. Not physical, but resonant. Our minds hear it, even when we don't want to." Lira leaned forward. "So, you're saying my emotions are like weapons?" "Yes," he said. "Your grief is radiation. Your anger is a storm." She stood up slowly. "Then you made the wrong person cry." That night, they put her back. In a cell, not because she was dangerous, but because they didn't understand what to do with her. Lira didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, eyes closed, remembering her mother's face, the laughter of her little brother, the final call from her best friend. Cut off mid-sentence by a scream. She didn't push the feelings away this time. She let them come. Each memory, each pain. And with every beat of her heart, the walls around her hummed. The floor shook lightly. Crack formed in the ceiling, somewhere in the ship. Lights began to flicker. By morning, Lira had made a decision. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't hide. She would train over the next week. Lira began practicing. Alone in her cell, she focused on different emotions. Not just grief and rage, but others too. Joy, compassion, hope, each feeling had a different effect. Sadness caused static in the alien systems. Rage triggered energy spikes. Love made the machines sing, resonating, with power like a living engine. She had no weapons, but she had feeling. And to the Vexery, that was more terrifying than any gun. One day, a young Vexery assistant named Nivek entered her chamber. He was smaller, younger, nervous. He had seen what she'd done to the others. But still, he didn't run. He handed her food with trembling. "Fingers, you should not be here." Lira looked at him. "Then help me leave." Nivek hesitated. "You are not like the others. You feel too loud." She tilted her head. "Do you feel anything, Nivek?" Paused. "I dream. Sometimes." She smiled softly. "Then you're not like the others either." Nivek didn't speak again, but he returned the next day. The next. He became her window into the rest of the ship. And slowly, he became her first ally. Through Nivek, she learned more. The Vexery Empire had no emotions. Not anymore. Generations ago, they removed them through bioediting and synthetic brain implants. They believed feelings made a species unstable, illogical, primitive, but now emotion was killing them. They had no defense against it, no understanding, no protection, and Lira was their first exposure to its raw power. One evening, the alarms blared again. Something had triggered a full lockdown. Nivek rushed into her cell, face pale. "They fear you. They want to erase you." Lira stood calmly. "Then it's time." "Time for what?" She smiled. "Time to feel." They moved her to ward, the dissection chamber 6 armed guards surrounding her. Zelnari watched from above. "This was a mistake," he said coldly. "You were too unstable to study. You must be neutralized."
Lira
closed her eyes. Behind the guards, machines began flickering from the walls. Distant echoes vibrated like whispers. Xe Elnari's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "I'm remembering," Lira said. The guards raised their weapons. Too late. A pulse exploded outward from her body, silent, invisible, unstoppable. The guards dropped their weapons, clutching their heads. Some screamed. Others curled into fetal positions. One began sobbing uncontrollably. Zelnari gasped as his console sparked. He tried to issue commands, but his voice trembled. He felt something: regret, fear, loss. He didn't know what it was, but it hurt. Lira opened her eyes and looked at him. "This is what you erased from your species." Zelnari backed away. "You are a plague." "No," she said. "I'm a mirror." Moments later, she stood in the hallway, Nivek by her side. Lights flickered. Alarms spun uselessly. Lira walked calmly toward the shuttle bay. Not a single Vexery dared stop her. As she passed a reflective panel, she saw her own face. Tears still marked her cheeks, but her eyes burned with focus. Her sorrow wasn't weakness, it was direction. Her grief wasn't a curse, it was fuel, and her rage, it was justice. As the escape shuttle broke free from the ship, drifting silently into the void of space, Lira looked back one last time. She didn't say a word, but the ship behind her trembled as if afraid of what it had just released. The alien lab was silent to silent. 20 tall, thin Vexery scientists circled the glowing pod in the center of the room. Cold lights from above reflected off their pale, hairless skin. Their large black eyes blinked slowly as they studied the human girl inside. She looked small, weak. Her body trembled, and her lips moved as she whispered something they didn't understand. Her fists clenched as if she were holding back the weight of entire memories. And then she screamed. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was grief, a deep, raw sound that made even the machines flicker. The Vexery laughed. A high, clicking noise, emotionless and sharp, but the floor shook, and none of them noticed. Core. Story. Her name was Lira Thane. She had been born on Earth under the silver sky of New Geneva, a city that no longer existed. 2 years ago, the Vexery Empire had launched their quiet invasion. No demands. It's just sudden, precise strikes. The humans had fought. Earth had bled. And when New Geneva fell, Lira was one of the few taken alive. She was only 17. The aliens didn't see her as a threat. She wasn't military. She wasn't enhanced. She wasn't a pilot or a strategist. She was just emotionally too emotional. They noted it in their reports, how often she cried, how she reacted to images of Earth's destruction, how she felt things no Vexery ever would. They believed her to be defective, perfect specimen to study, because to the Vexery emotion was a sickness. It's a leftover trait from primitive life forms, something they had cleansed from their species long ago through generations of gene editing. They didn't understand humans. They didn't understand Lira. Inside the lab, Lira lay strapped inside the pod. Her wrists burned from the restraints. Her eyes were red, her breathing ragged. Not because they had hurt her, but because they kept showing her things. Footage of Earth's cities burning. Her mother's last message replaying. The sound of her little brother screaming during the attack. Over and over. They called it stimulus. Testing. She called it torture. The lead scientist, a tall Vexery named Zelnari, tapped at a console. He had studied over 90 humans. Most of them had died. Some had gone insane. But Lirushi was different. She endured. She remembered. She felt that fascinated him. And frightened him, though he didn't admit it. She has neural surges during emotional spikes, Zelnari said to the others. Higher than any recorded human subject. Her brain chemistry is unstable, another replied. She is dangerous. Emotion. Is not danger, Zelnari corrected. It is chaos. And we must map it. As he spoke, the pod lights dimmed.
How?
Lira opened her eyes. The scream had passed, but her expression had not softened. She stared directly at Zelnari. Something passed between them, not words, not thought, just a feeling. And he blinked. For the first time in 230 years, he felt cold in her mind. Lira clutched the memory of her mother. The final hug before the Vexery ships lit the sky. The look in her father's eyes as he pushed her into the underground shelter. The voice of her little brother saying, "Don't forget me." They had taken everything from her, her family, her home, her planet. But they hadn't taken her feelings. They couldn't. And now, something inside her had changed. Back in the observation room, a quiet alarm pulsed. The scientists didn't notice. They were too busy discussing her next exposure cycle. The hallway outside, the wall panels shimmered. Energy readings spiked, and deep in the system's core, data flowed in strange patterns. Emotional frequencies, raw and wild, were leaking into the ship's artificial mind. The machines were starting to feel. It began with flickers, then static, then temperature drops, then lights exploding one by one. Lira felt it before they did. She wasn't sure how, but her grief, her pain, her rage was connecting to something in the ship. Something mechanical. Or perhaps something more. She heard voices in her head. Not human, not alien, but echoes. Like the ship itself was starting to dream. And its dream was her. She closed her eyes and let the memories flow. The pain, the fear, the love. She let them burn through her. The pod began to crack. Zelnari stepped forward. "The subject is destabilizing," he said. "Terminate her," another snapped. "No," Zelnari hissed. "This is the apex moment. This is what we've waited for." He never finished the sentence. The pod exploded outward, sending shards of glass and energy across the lab. A wave of heat and cold pulsed from Lira's body, motion made raw. Physical one scientist dropped dead. Another began screaming, tearing at their own skin. Only Zelnari remained standing, but barely. He looked into the glowing eyes of the human girl. She stood tall now, Her hair floated as if caught in an invisible wind. Her face was calm. Too calm. "You think emotion is weakness?" she said, her voice cold and soft. "But it's the last thing I have left. And you gave me a reason to use it." The lights went black. Emergency klaxons echoed in the control room above. An alien commander watched in horror as every screen began to fail. Only one camera remained active, focused on Lira as she walked through the burning lab. Behind her, bodies lay scattered. Ahead of her, the hallway doors opened, and from deep within the ship, a soft voice whispered in ancient code. "The girl lives. She remembers. She burns."